Researchers at the Media and Communication Department of Nelson Mandela University have explored the use of YouTube sermons by self-proclaimed prophet Shepherd Bushiri for mass profit. With a following of over 6 million subscribers on YouTube and Facebook followers combined, Bushiri employs a calculated digital strategy that merges spiritual authority with commercial branding to build a global following. Now, using techniques like linking financial giving, such as donations and tithing, to earn divine favor, while claiming remote, miraculous powers, cultivating a super prophet persona, researchers found that at the center of these mega churches turned digital movements is the custom of taking advantage of Africans who are already vulnerable either through illness or socio-economic failures or possible religious psychosis. Let's speak to one of the authors of the analysis published on the Conversation, NMU Media and Communication researcher, Ambrose Kolawole Dada. Good morning. Thank you so much for your time. In your research, you analyze the sermons of Shepherd Bushiri. And before we go deeper, how big has the influence of digital prophets become across Africa today?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
How big has the influence of digital prophets become across Africa today?
Yes, prophets are using the digital platform quite a lot today. And as you rightly put it, Bushiri is one of the African prophets who has a large following in South Africa and even beyond South Africa.
Now, your article says many Africans who follow these movements are already vulnerable due to poverty and inequality and weak public services. Why does that environment make prophetic movements grow so quickly?
Yes, because of the socioeconomic situation of many people, high rates of poverty, high rates of unemployment, and so many other social challenges. It seems that some of the prophets and pastors are catching upon this, to exploit the people. So what is lacking in government or governance, they tend to think that they can make up for some of these things. So they tell the people, okay, they have solutions to their challenges. They have solutions to, poverty by making them make money. For example, in our research, Prophet Bushiri was talking about some of the congregants who will say, Bushiri touched me and it won so many contracts for me. Things like that seems to appeal to people who are facing economic hardships.
Now, you also wrote that sermons on platforms like YouTube are carefully framed narratives that promote ideas about faith, authority, and prosperity, as you put it. What exactly do you mean by framing in religious communication?
Yes, framing has to do with the fact that in communication, people have intentions. It's a different story whether the intentions are right or good or edifying. So framing is a communication technique that says that people have a lens or perspective by which they sell ideas to people or whoever will be encoding or decoding the information they are passing across. So in our study, we were saying that, this seems to be applicable to religious communication as well. Pastors and prophets have the tendency to design certain narratives in a way that will appeal to unsuspecting members of the congregation.
Now, speaking of that, are miracles and prophecies sometimes staged for digital audiences?
Yes, it's a possibility that miracles are staged because now on the digital platform, there is no physical close interaction with whatever or whoever is making the show. So people just have their devices with them and they easily want to accept have the tendency to be lured away by what they see on the screen and to believe what they see on the screen. So some of the prophets and pastors tend to use some of these digital platform to lure the people by staging miracles. Yeah, there are some miracles that are real, but on the digital platform, this might be difficult to really assess and certify.
Now, when religious leaders elevate themselves above scripture or tradition, what risks does this create for believers?
Yes, certain churches have what we call the hierarchy. The hierarchy is designed to check individuals within the church. But there's a tendency in what we call, or scholars call, the new prophetic churches. For example, the pastor comes up like an entrepreneur, as if he owns a business of his own, is the CEO, and the tendency is there for him to want to do as he pleases.
Now,
So,
sure. No, Ambrose, I was just going to say, you introduced the term prophetreneurship. Could you explain this to us in further detail?
Yes, some scholars did some studies around neo-prophetic churches and their prophets. So they introduced scholars like Moses Gatto and Dubé talked about prophetpreneurship, that some modern day prophets are more interested in entrepreneurship in the sense of business making. And so the focus is on the prophet, not on the prophetic mission. And so when a pastor or prophet or church or leader, religious leader, focuses more on the prophet, on the prophet, rather than the mission, the prophetic mission, then there's a tendency towards what we call prophetpreneurship.
Now, do you think that there's enough regulation around churches, especially in light of some shocking videos that we've seen online? I think we've all seen videos of some churches feeding their congregants grass, or pastors jumping on top of their congregants, or, just in some cases really demeaning and dehumanizing videos that have surfaced.
Yes, you know, in Africa, as GSBT rightly puts it, Africa are notoriously religious, you know. So culturally, there is this sense of divine, the respect for the divine, the belief in the divine. So when somebody comes off as a prophet and says, "Oh, you do this and this will happen to you," there is a tendency for unsuspecting publics and congregants to follow exactly what the prophet is saying because of the belief that the prophet is supernatural, is close to God, and the likes. So I think some prophets tend to take advantage of this by telling the people to do certain things that seems out of the way. And you find some people actually believing in this and following as long as the prophet has said it, then it is right.
Now, in your view, before we let you go, Ambrose, should governments regulate these churches more strictly, or would that risk interfering with freedom of religion?
Oh, yes, I think there is freedom of religion in most African countries, if not all. But I think there should be a level of internal mechanism that churches should have. Some traditional churches have this. This is what I called initially the hierarchy. So there's a bishop or a pope or an archbishop, a group of people who are in the leadership, who regulates and says, "Oh, this is right, this is not right. Oh, this is the limit you can go." So I think in a sense, the government can assist church organizations to ensure that they have this hierarchy, this leadership that helps to regulate whatever is happening within the different churches and denominations.
All right, Ambrose, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
That was Research Assistant in the Department of Media and Communications at the Nelson Mandela University, Ambrose Kolawole Dada.